welcome to another show. Well, this is my professional response to Nirvgorilla, and I think that this is going to be productive for everyone. I'm not going to swear. I'm not going to use an ad hominem attack against this gentleman. I respect his channel. I respect his position, and we're going to look at that. And I think that everyone could benefit from this. And I think that I think he's got some valid points. I don't agree with his assessment that targeted individuals are all suffering from mental illness, and I do not think that everyone who is experiencing this is suffering from a persecutory delusion. Okay, I'm gonna say that up front. However, the things that Nirvgorilla has observed in videos and probably in testimonies and stuff like that, a lot of the things that he has pointed out are true in the sense that they are the product of a psychosis of sorts. But it is not to say, that people are crazy. It's not to say that people are suffering from mental illness. It's not to say that these individuals have not experienced something genuine. What it is that it is manifested into a type of, a delusion, okay? And some of it is just post-traumatic syndrome. What I'm getting at, and I'm not going to mention any names because I don't do that, okay? But he's looked at videos. I'll be honest. I've only watched probably about 10 minutes of Nirvgorilla. I watched one of his interviews with, I think it was Absent Minded Dave a while back. I think it was a year ago or something like that. I can't remember. And I watched a little bit of the one everybody was telling me that he had mentioned. Honestly, I didn't even hear what he said about me. I watched a few minutes of it where he was criticizing that gentleman from Canada, okay? And some of his videos or whatever. And there's probably other videos. And I think that, I've seen enough videos out there to know where he's coming from, okay? And like I said before, he's got a valid point. I haven't seen, there's probably been some things that were kind of interesting, but for the most part, I haven't seen any evidence for gang stalking in any of these videos. Okay, he was pointing out, what's going on? These people are just doing their regular thing. None of this stuff is proof of anything, right? It's just people living their ordinary lives, and for the most part, I have to agree with him. Okay, and I've talked about that in prior videos that when a targeted individual, when someone who is a victim of gang stalking, group harassment, whatever you want to call it, experiences these attacks, that's what happens. Okay, and by the time they figure this out, and people do get attacked. I've talked about that in videos where they will be assaulted, whether people are being paid to do it, whether it's some type of government thing like MK Ultra. By the way, that is documented, Nirvgorilla. Okay, nobody is making up the stuff about MK Ultra, and if you look into that, that's classic, group harassment, where people are drugged. There's people in a conspiracy, literally, and there's different medical facilities that were involved that were obfuscating the truth about what they were doing. Okay, it was a conspiracy. Now, the thing I want to illustrate, like I was getting to a point, when people are attacked, then what happens? Well, they become traumatized, okay? And then they seek validation, right? Because there's a lot of other things going on with targeted individuals, and people are paid to harass them. Sometimes these things can be spiritual as well, which I know there's going to be a pushback against that. Okay, fine, whatever. We can agree to disagree. But at the same time, I believe that these people are genuine. I believe that gentleman up in Canada is a genuine victim of harassment. Does that mean that all the videos and everything that he makes are examples of gang? Obviously not. I'm trying to be as nice as I can. I think that a lot of targeted individuals are suffering from post-traumatic syndrome. They are suffering from a gang stalking psychosis. Okay, and that's not to say that just because you end up reading into something means you're a victim of mental psychosis. Okay, that's not my point. My point is that when someone is attacked, they're traumatized. Okay, and if you want to look at the technical definition of these things, it's going to fall along the lines of this stuff. So what you're looking at what I'm trying to explain right now is how he is processing this information, which, in my opinion, as far as the videos showing evidence of gang stalking, he's correct. It's not. When people are videoing the people in their neighborhood or just living their lives or whatever, or people are driving down the street maybe with a headlight out or something, it's not to say that this stuff doesn't happen, but there's no evidence that any of these things are gang stalking. Whether somebody is wearing a red shirt or whether they, like I said, they're missing a headlight or whatever, or the accident scenes where the first responders. Those are genuine life situations. I've talked about that before. People are not staging accidents for targeted individuals. Okay, that's delusional. Okay, when you see the fire department going somewhere and they're going to put out a fire, they didn't start that fire to mess with you. When people are in traffic accidents, man, and you see someone get put on a stretcher, or that's not a staged event for you. Okay, but does that mean that people haven't been harassed by individuals who may have worked for the fire department or police station or whatever? No, because really, technically, this whole thing is bigger than that, and anybody could be involved in this whole thing. Okay, but like I said, I'm going to be fair on this. When people are videotaping or taking pictures of aerial vehicles or helicopters, I've seen maybe one or two that were pretty suspicious. But then again, I don't know. For all I know, maybe the individual that made the video was hanging out by a military facility or something. I don't know. Okay, I don't know that. But most of the videos that I've seen were just helicopters, man. They were just people flying in a helicopter. It had nothing to do with anybody being surveilled that I could see. Now, does that mean that no one has been surveilled by a helicopter? No, it doesn't mean that. In fact, I don't remember what it was, but 6 months, 8 months ago, I had a friend he doesn't even know about this stuff. He would never even claim to be a targeted individual or anything. And I was sharing with him some pretty sensitive information about stuff I'm not even going to mention. And he called me up and he said, "You wouldn't believe what just happened. A helicopter just came down and buzzed my damn trailer." And I'm assuming he's telling me the truth. He didn't get a video of it. He didn't get anything. He said he doesn't have, he's not saying that it had anything to do with me, but he was kind of joking around about it. He goes, "I've never seen anything like it." He goes, "But there are, military facilities around the area where he is." He said, "Yeah, it could have had nothing to do with it, but it was pretty weird." He said, "Don't send me any more videos about this stuff." He's joking around, but kind of serious at the same time. Okay, so my point is, can it be possible for something like that? Yeah, that's possible. I'm not saying that if somebody's out there getting angry, you don't know what I've had them follow fine. Okay, what my point is that the videos that I've seen and all that, they do not, in my opinion, look like genuine gang stalking or group harassment or surveillance or anything like that. They don't. And in our modern day and age, I think that, using satellites, or if it was really the government or something like that, or GPS trackers, or, who knows, maybe a drone or something, would probably be a little more realistic. Okay. But at the same time, I know that back in the 80s and the 90s, they were using military helicopters to desensitize people to military presence in case of a martial law scenario. Okay, I had all the information on this stuff way back. I had a bunch of papers on it, and they were literally classifying citizens. They were profiling citizens, and they were using a color-coded system to point out individuals that might be considered a threat. Okay, they've been doing stuff like that for a long time. There's all kinds of things that I could go into that are covert military operations. But you know what? I don't want to do that for a lot of reasons. Okay. But because I don't have to prove anything. My point right now is that there are things that can happen. I think targeted individuals have experienced genuine harassment. And I also think that the things that they have been exposed to and subjected to can sometimes make people dysfunctional. I've talked about that, where people process information the wrong way. Okay. That's one of the reasons why I make these videos. And I talk about that, especially when you get into hypothesizing what's going on. And I think it's okay to do that. Okay, I think it's interesting. It's when people start fighting about it, and they hold to it as if these things are proven facts, and they're not. Okay, like some of the stuff that has to do with mind mapping, and the government programs and neural monitoring and all that stuff. It's interesting to talk about all that stuff, but I don't have concrete evidence of these things, and I have to be careful what kind of theories I'm coming up with. Okay, it's not to say the government's not working on these things, because they are. Okay, I have proof of that. Whether they're using something like I have no proof of that. Okay, and a lot of the things that that targeted individuals talk about fall into the area of speculation. That's okay. A lot of people talk about secret societies. There's plenty of proof for a lot of that stuff. Okay. But the huge problem, especially when you're talking about individuals who want to sue the government or whatever, how are you going to prove who it is? How are you going to prove that it is the Freemasons? And I believe in that stuff. I believe in secret societies, and I've made videos about that. There's a connection, with the hierarchical system that we have in our government with the Freemasons, with the Rosicrucian Freemasons, with the Illuminati and all that stuff. It's pretty creepy when you get into it. It all goes back to Egypt, and it has to do with the spiritual connection, and it has to do with the principalities and powers that are literally ruling the planet. I'm sure he's going to push back on that. I don't really care. The point is I'd have to admit that a lot of this stuff is speculation. Okay, there's proof, there's bloodlines and all kinds of weird stuff going on. But the point is that's not really the issue. Okay, the issue is that what he's saying, well, this stuff is crazy. This stuff is not evidence of gang stalking. I'd say I would have to agree with him. And like I said earlier, I think everybody can benefit from this because he's classic. Nirvgorilla has the classic response of anyone who's never experienced this stuff. Okay, and it's logical. Okay, you can't just sit back and you can criticize the way he's doing it, but his response is logical. Okay, he is being critical of the information, and he is processing information and doing an inductive study on it, and he has concluded that there's no evidence for it. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I would have to disagree with his combative and hostile attitude towards targeted individuals and how he's approached this. But for now, just looking at the data, just looking at the evidence, and just the world that everybody experiences until they're a targeted individual or experience group harassment, I think his response is acceptable. Okay, as far as just the conclusion aspect. Okay. And the other aspect of this is that, we'll just say that he wonders. We'll say he said, I don't know, is this stuff real or not? I mean, is there any evidence? What if it was? What if he was to say, well, hypothetically, we'll just say some of it's true or all of it's true. But he would have to pick apart for his own mental health this thing and disassemble it and just kind of pretty much wash it out of his brain if possible. Because you have to remember that, for somebody to come into this stuff and just say, well, I don't know if this stuff is real, that means the world that I live in is completely different than I thought, first. Second, this could happen to anybody. It's something that I really, truly have to worry about. And thirdly, that is going to alter the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of any logical, normal individual. And that is something that is unacceptable. Okay? You have to tear it apart. You have to disassemble it and put it away. And I'm talking about right now, if someone was able to prove this stuff. Now I'm gonna present a few things, but the point is it's a natural response. Okay, but it goes deeper than that. Okay, and I can bring up some examples of that. We'll just say someone was able to prove or bring forth evidence that was irrefutable. Okay, what would happen? The same thing that would happen in 9/11. I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going to argue about that. But at the very least, you could say that what happened concerning 9/11, the investigation was totally unsatisfactory at the very least. Okay, and there even more than that. I watched a lot of documentaries on that. It doesn't match up. We're going to drop that. What do people do? La 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 la. They didn't want to talk about it. Don't talk about that at the barbecue. Don't talk about it at work. Just shut up. We want to go back to our lives as normal. Okay. What about the pandemic? Right? What about COVID crimes on YouTube with the Dr. Fleming testimony under oath? He did investigations into this whole thing. Watch it. Okay, he went and he followed the money trail. He did everything. He has completely disassembled this whole thing and opened himself up to lawsuits. The guy's a lawyer, a famous doctor, and an inventor. And what do people do? I don't want to hear anything about it, right? And that's the typical response. And people who think that they're gonna get a voice or they're gonna sue the government. How do you prove this stuff? Because what happens, this thing is scientific. What they'll do is they will come in and they will traumatize the victim. They will attack them. By the time they screw their head back on and start wearing, body cams or, carrying around a little camera or whatever they're going to do, it's pretty much over. And the whole thing is designed, and it's not over completely, but the whole thing is designed to traumatize the victim so that no one has to do anything to them. And then the perpetrators can use things that the victim has been sensitized to. They can sneak around and do little things. And of course, all that trauma is going to have reciprocity. They're constantly looking over their shoulder. They're victims. They've been traumatized. They have irrational fear. And I'm going to go into that. And that's just a natural response. And all you have to do is rattle their cage every now and again. And if they start to heal up or come out of it or whatever, all you got to do is do the same thing again. But the beauty of it is it can be covert, okay? And by then, usually the targeted individual has been discredited. And it's a way to drive people crazy. It is a way to make them dysfunctional, okay? And so what he is analyzing and all the stuff that he's looking at and everything that's going on and the videos that people are making, and they're raving about all these things and talking about all these things and making videos of helicopters and all this stuff, and he is looking at the effects of what happens to someone when they are subjected to this traumatic type of attack. And unfortunately, some of the individuals out there are experiencing the effects of this stuff more than others. Now, you might say, well, is there any evidence anything like this has ever been used? There is. Okay. And probably the best case study would be the Lutheran Synod, the Missouri Lutheran Synod. And you can look into that. Maybe I'll have to post some links or something like that. But they used that type of group harassment, group mobbing, gang stalking, whatever you want to call it. Remember, that also I am borrowing the nomenclature, right? You can call it gang stalking. That's pretty popular. You can call it group harassment. You can call it mobbing. The Lutheran Synod was something that listed basically the same techniques. Okay, they would drive people crazy. They would do covert techniques. They would study someone. They would profile them. They would break into their dwellings. They would break into their office at work. They would conspire together and do all these little games and everything. And the individual would either be driven off the job, discredited, or driven insane, literally. And some people were. But of course, I mentioned MKUltra. The interesting thing about MKUltra is that people that had drug problems or that had already been discredited, maybe criminals or whatever, or people who were suspected of having mental problems, were used more frequently. Okay. Normal people were still used, though, and they were referred to medical facilities for special treatment or inpatient treatment. Kind of like the movie A Cure for Wellness, if you wanted to use an example. And the reason I keep bringing up MKUltra is because it's documented, it's proven. It was conspiratorial. It was a government program, literally. Okay, am I saying that all these people are victims of government program? No, I'm not. And there's a lot of ways this stuff can happen. Sometimes people just get together and do it. Sometimes individuals with power just they're not happy with their lives and they got to play God with somebody. So rather than to look at maybe someone who's experiencing the traumatic effects of a trauma-based psychosis and saying, oh, everything they're talking about is completely wacko. Okay, no, that's not professional. And for me, the way I look at it is when someone reaches out to me and talks to me about something, I assume by default what they're saying is completely accurate. It doesn't really matter. You could even speculate and say hypothetically that I was helping people process information more critically and use a scientific inductive method to prevent them from reading into things or to bring them out of a trauma-based psychosis. Okay, and I think that there wouldn't be anything wrong with that. Am I going to assume that what they're experiencing is mental illness, though? I don't think that's fair because that can cause similar effects. And if anyone was to say, well, you're preventing people from getting the proper treatment. Okay, really? Like what? An antipsychotic that's going to imbalance their hormones and shorten their lifespan? Some type of drug that's going to anesthetize them. If you want to go out and get medication, if anybody on my channel wants to go talk to a psychiatrist, I would say go for it. If you want to go tell people, fine, but do it at your own risk, all right? Because they're going to get labeled as mentally ill. No one is going to take them seriously. And just like MK Ultra patients, they're going to be misdiagnosed. And even if they were suffering from a psychosis, like I said, hypothetically, if they were reading into things and processing information incorrectly, what do? Do you put them on drugs? Do you tell them it's all just in your mind? No. You help them process the information. You help them become critical, and you're not rude to them. You're not cruel to them, which brings me to my next point, okay? And I've been waiting for this, okay? And I like I said, I didn't watch a whole lot of Nirvgorilla. I watched about 10 minutes. It's not going to take a rocket scientist to break this down. So Nirvgorilla has become offended, and he has attacked the targeted individual community and considers himself an HI individual, which is a healthy individual, okay? And like I said, I think he is breaking down this stuff correctly, at least by the data that he has. Now, for the more confusing aspect of his motivation, we'll have to get a bird's eye view. You believe, Nirvgorilla, that these people are suffering from mental illness. By your own testimony, you believe that you are a healthy individual. You believe that these people are mentally impaired, okay? But in your videos, you're going after them. You're shaming them, right? For something that by definition, a mental illness or an impairment which they have no control over. And you're going to what? You're going to pick on them? You're going to criticize them. You're going to shame them. You're going to call them out. And I'm going to get you on my show. And I bet there's nothing you can say now. You're crazy. Really? And that's healthy? That's not healthy, Nirvgorilla. Okay, you have to decide at this point which is worse. Someone who is suffering from a psychosis or maybe even mental illness, or someone who could be doing anything with their time, okay? A healthy individual who could be doing anything, who is now motivated to seek these people out with hostility and venomous criticism. Zero compassion involved. That to me is a red flag. That's very, very suspicious, right? If you were a healthy individual who had, a life that was fulfilling, right? If you were a normal person, you wouldn't be harassing mentally ill people, okay? You wouldn't be seeking people out to criticize. Obviously, you've been subjected to something. I'm not saying it's your fault. I don't know what that is. But I think it's fair, since you profiled us, you profiled me, that I could profile you, okay? And that's not normal, Nirvgorilla. Okay, that's what you'd call sick. Okay, you would call that not healthy at the very least. Okay, if you are a healthy individual and you have a normal life, there's a lot of things that you could be doing with your time other than that. Okay, there's no excuse for that. That's weird. Going after individuals who you, by your own definition, have considered mentally impaired is, well, unexcusable. That's what you call a bully. The hostility that you are displaying and the obvious dissatisfaction you have with your life. Well, I have sympathy for it. Okay. I know a lot of people that are like that. I'm not going to say that I know why. I'm sure there's a reason, and it might not even be your fault. Okay. I don't know. I have no idea. I can't really speculate about that. I know you've been subjected to something, though. I know that for whatever reason, you feel that you need to vent, and you have found these victims. That's what they are. They're people who are impaired. They're people who are easy targets for you. You have found vulnerable individuals, and you are venting on them. It's fairly obvious. Now I could see how you'd become irritated, right? Because there are a lot of videos that are obviously not evidence of gang stalking or group harassment or whatever, and there's this whole hype about gang stalking, and it got your attention and it agitated you. Okay, but you obviously have gotten lost in this whole thing and forgotten what you're doing. You cannot abandon wisdom for the sake of wisdom. You can't be right and wrong at the same time. You cannot declare someone to be the victim of illness and then criticize them for it. That's cognitive dissonance, okay? It's neither healthy or smart. And just a piece of advice, you might want to cut down on the profanity on your show. I think you got a lot of potential. I think you're a smart individual, okay? Love the video games, love that stuff, but you know, try to bring some nobility into it. If I was you, I would just be glad that I wasn't one of the people suffering from this, whatever you want to think it is. You got a lot of potential, Nirvgorilla, but it's time to grow up. Oh, by the way, I see you ended your show with Cosmos, with Carl Sagan. In the last 2 weeks of his life, he requested for prayer when he was sick. He didn't die an atheist, Nirvgorilla. Just thought you'd want to know. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.